If you want to get into the property market and you don't have enough for a down payment, then stay tuned to this video. I'm going to give you some strategies on why this is important and how to do it. Before we get started in today's video about 10 strategies on how to come up with a down payment for real estate, I just want to take a moment to recognize how lucky we are to be in such a wonderful country like Canada. Anytime you turn on the news, the rest of the world is just, it's so tragic to see what's happening out there. It's so sad. At least you have the safety and security to be in this country like Canada. And I recognize that not everybody can benefit from ownership of real estate because it's very expensive. And most people are gonna be renters for life, which is not a bad thing either. But if you have the opportunity to get into the real estate market, you should. And here's 10 tips on how to do it. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first answer is pretty obvious. It's gonna be make more money. And I know that not everybody can do that. You might be in a job or industry where that's not possible. You know, I believe that anything's possible really if you put your mind to it. But you know, there might be some situations why that's not possible. Or maybe you don't want it. Maybe you don't want the added stress or the added risk to take on in order to facilitate making more money. But that is the obvious answer, whether you get a second job or find a new industry altogether. But just assuming that you can't do that, you can obviously decrease your expenses, right? So you just have to prioritize how you spend your money. You have delayed gratification. You don't need that new car, you don't need the vacations and fancy things. There's other ways, those luxury goods, things like that. Save that money, and the best way to do it is to put it into automatic savings. What I mean is, if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, he always talks about paying yourself first. If you haven't read that book, first of all, that's the first thing you gotta do. Know the difference between assets and liabilities and how it works for you. But ultimately, you're gonna be paying yourself first, meaning that you kind of automatically take off whatever it is from your paycheck as a savings amount that you comfortably can do, so that before you know it, all of a sudden you have this big buffer to work with, right? And I guess if you do it in a way where you put into RSPs, then it'll help you in terms of tax-free savings because you're using before tax income and you're just sheltering it away. Ultimately, you can use that money later on as you accumulate up to, I think, maximum $35,000. You can take that and use it as your down payment and then pay it back over the next 15 years. I think you have to, you start paying it in the 4th year or something along those lines. Anyway, check out the first time home buyer program. It's a great way to get started into real estate investing if you already have an RSP savings account already. Another way to do it is if you have a car, perhaps even think about getting rid of your second car, or even your first car if you have one, or don't even get it in the first place. Because if you think about how much it costs to buy one of those things, I mean, your minimum payment is $300, $400, $500, $1,000 a month. Let's just say just for the car itself, for the lease or the loan. Then don't forget you have to pay for insurance, which would be a couple $100, and then gas, and then parking. That itself is a mortgage payment if you think about it. Just really calculate it out. If you decided to do Ubers once in a while, or take public transit, or walk, or bike, take other means of transportation, just think about how much money you're saving there. Put that into your RSPs and then borrow from it when you need your mortgage. I think the best way to come up with a down payment for a real estate purchase is through pre-construction purchases. It kind of just makes sense. It's like a layaway purchase where you put down 5% at a time until you hit your 20%, and generally you have about 2 years to do that. But in this upcoming project where I'm still gonna buy into this is because you're putting down 5% per year until you hit 20%, and that allows you about 4 or 5 years to put that down. So if you think about an $800,000 purchase, that's $40,000 a year, or $1 million, that's $50,000 a year. Now I know it sounds like a lot of money for most people, but it's a heck of a lot better than coming up with $200,000 up front right now to purchase something. Or else what are you gonna do? You're not gonna do it at all, right? So what happened was back then in 2006, when I bought my first condo, I printed all my checks and I just did a photocopy of it and I posted it on my wall. Now this is another purchase in 2017. Because I can't find those checks anymore, it's a long time ago. But it just made me think about every time I wanted to buy something new, like my car broke down or whatever, I didn't buy a new car because I knew that I had these payments upcoming, right? So it just forces you to pay yourself first, and it's just another way to do it. Might be a strategy that will work for you, I don't know, hopefully. And if you're lucky enough to own your own house and you've owned it for quite some time, perhaps you should consider refinancing your place. You know, in the recent years, we've had a lot of run up in real estate prices, and interest rates are at an all-time low right now. So why not put some of that equity to work? And then another way to do it, obviously, is to sell some investments if you have any money saved up in a TFSA or any kind of savings account or investment account. You can obviously cash out of that. Or perhaps you can borrow from family or friends or relatives if you have that option. That's always a great way. And if you can't borrow off them, then maybe think about perhaps partnering with somebody, whether it's a relative or a friend or somebody you know. It's a great way to kind of get invested together. I mean, why not? Tenants have roommates together, so why can't you have a housemate that you own something together? In fact, we just helped somebody recently where the first person came up with the down payment and the other person is paying for the monthly mortgage, right? They're helping to pay for that. So if you can arrange a structure with that with a partner, that's always a great way to get invested into real estate. And the other thing is, you don't necessarily need to have 20% down on your purchase if it's your first purchase and you're occupying for yourself. Because if you think about it, if you put down, like say the average condo is 750,000, if you're putting down 20%, that's 150 grand. Not everybody has 150 grand to work with as a down payment. Instead, why don't you put down 10% or maybe a little less than that? You have 5% up to 500,000 and then 10% from the balance up to $1 million. But let's just call it 10%. That's $75,000. That might be a little more doable. Yes, you have to pay CMHC insurance premiums, but on the other hand, you'll save more money in the mortgage because your mortgage is insured. Banks like that, and they actually give you preferred rates because of that, right? So it kind of makes sense to do less than 20% down if you can, if you want to do that to get into the market. Of course, your payments will be a little bit higher, so you got to factor that into your equations as well too. And then I know this is a little more complicated, and I know for a standard property, whether it's a condo or house, it doesn't really make sense for seller financing, but there might be a chance where you can talk to the seller and you make an arrangement with them. You know, there's benefits for the seller to be able to give you a loan on themselves with low interest or no interest at all. Essentially is that their capital gains, you know, helps them out as well too. Say they paid off the place, and let's say you're buying something for $1 million. Then instead of incurring that $1 million in 1 year as income, then you could say, I'm gonna pay you $200,000 over the next 5 years. And you know, that's $200,000 of income for them every 5 years, I mean, every year, right? So for the next 5 years. That might work out. It's a pretty complex deal and it doesn't happen all the time. So, so don't count on that, but there might be a chance where that happens. Say you're buying from a relative or somebody that you like or know that likes you and is giving you a favor, who knows? Another alternative way to get invested into the real estate market is through rent-to-own programs. I did a webinar about this a couple weeks ago. There's a link somewhere above here, somewhere. It's great for people that have bruised credit and need some help recovering their credit, or people even go with good credits and high-paying jobs, it's just that they don't have the down payment to put down. So that's always a good strategy to look into as well too. Wait, before we go, I do have some final words to say, and I want to talk about your credit score as well too. If you're waiting to get your credit score up, then that's another reason to save for your down payment and not buy now, because you generally need to have, I think it's a 630 credit score, if not 680 Equifax score. Check with your mortgage broker to make sure. But you want to make sure you have a good credit score so you get some preferred rates. It just helps a little bit. Ultimately, you want to have your GDS and TDS ratios in line. That's basically your debt to income ratios. That's the TDS portion. The GDS means what it costs to carry your place. So talk to your mortgage broker and ask what these ratios are. I think it's about 36% around there, plus or minus. They can make exceptions sometimes too if you have a good credit score and a good job and all that. It's your principal, your interest, your maintenance and your taxes, plus some heating costs, maybe some insurance costs. Whatever it costs to carry the place, that has to be no more than roughly 36% of your gross annual income. So if you count the monthly, times it by 12, get your annual, and that has to be 36% of your annual income. Hopefully that makes sense. Talk to your mortgage broker again to make sure that you have the right amounts there. And then if you factor in the GDS ratios plus any other outstanding debts that you have, your TDS ratios is your GDS plus any other debts that you have outstanding. You got to make sure that is less than, I think the number is 42%. It's plus or minus and depends on the lender that you have that you're working with and what their guidelines are. That's how you want to make sure that you can afford what you're trying to get into. And then also, I guess the last thing is you want to make sure you have an emergency fund. They say from 3 to 6 months of income before you can start getting into a property, because essentially you're taking on more debt. Even though you are buying an asset that hopefully will appreciate more than the interest rate that you're paying for your debt, if you can't make those payments, you can be underwater and you don't have any other emergency funds. So don't stretch yourself too thin, is all I'm trying to say. You want to save for your down payment by making good decisions. You want to be able to pay off any high interest loans first. Another question I read about a lot is it better to pay off your debts or get invested into the real estate market? And I'm gonna say it depends. As long as you're not paying any high interest debts, such as credit card debts at like 20%, that just doesn't make sense. Pay that off as soon as possible before you do anything. That's the most important thing. You gotta think about what your mortgage debt would be. If you have a mortgage, let's call it 3%, 2%. If you're paying a 9% mortgage on a line of credit, yeah, pay that off first. But if you don't have any of that and all you have is student loans at 3 or 4%, then maybe it might make sense to start investing into real estate and start putting some money into your own property. Because essentially, yes, you have debt, but you also have an asset that will appreciate, hopefully at a rate that's higher than the interest rate that you're paying. So hopefully that makes sense, whether you should be paying off your debt or investing into a mortgage. Some key takeaways that you should think about is how much debt do you have? Ask yourself that question. Again, you want to pay higher interest rates debt off first before you start committing into a mortgage. And then the other question is, how are you managing your debt right now if you have any financial obligations? So if you're paying rent and paying off your debt and you're okay and you think you can afford a little bit more and you have a little bit of buffer room, then yeah, it totally makes sense to buy real estate right now and continue to save up for that. I just don't think that rent's gonna get any cheaper in the long run, so you might as well stabilize your prices now by buying a property. So hopefully that makes sense. It's not about avocado toast. It's not about saving money on coffees every day. That's not going to make a difference in your payments. However, the mental exercise you have to go through of holding back from buying that stuff and spending money on frivolously on stuff like that, it just carries on to other parts of your life where you will perhaps forego all those luxury goods and cars and all that stuff so that you can save up for your down payment to get a house, because it's the right thing to do. I think it's the most secure thing to do, and there's a lot of benefits for owning your own home, such as tax-free gain, you know, the primary residences and all that, without having to pay tax on that. There's a lot of reasons to get your own property. And if you have any other questions about how to get started, please just reach out to us, visit our website below, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.